Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time, end times, and the dividing of time. A past and present day application. United States of America, repeating the history of the Republic of Rome. Rome, in its different phases, occupies the largest place of any national name in history. Rome, considered with reference to government, is interesting and important. Considered with reference to religion, it is yet more interesting and more important. But when considered with reference to the interrelationship of government and religion, it is most interesting and most important. The principle of Rome in all its phases is that religion and government are inseparable. The principle of the government of the United States is that religion is essentially distinct and totally separate from civil government and entirely exempt from its cognizance. The principle of Rome is the abject slavery of the mind. The principle of the United States of America is the absolute freedom of the mind. As it Christianity that first and always antagonized this governmental principle of Rome and established the governmental principle of the United States of America, the fundamental idea, the one thread taught, was to develop the principles of Christianity with reference to civil government and to portray the mischievous results of the last departure from those principles. It is said of the early Romans that they possessed the faculty of self-government beyond any people of whom we have historical knowledge, with the sole exception of the Anglo-Saxons. And by virtue of this, in the very nature of the case, they became the most powerful nation of all ancient times. But their extensive conquest filled Rome with gold. With wealth came luxury, and with luxury, vice. Welcome to 144,000 teachers, the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. In the menu, a mighty movement, go and teach. And this is covered through the major class on forgotten history, lasting 7 days, preparing for the exam, again lasting 7 days, a self-represented litigant training for the court of law lasting 5 days, and 2 workshops on religious liberty. And we have also preparing for the extra day. This we encourage everyone to cover either on their own or in groups or in setting up group and then being able to teach the people. This particular study that we just showed you in Go and Teach first started with this particular section of our menu called the Last Conflict. And in this Last Conflict section, we have been able to present 3 different studies that we encourage you again to see. The material is slightly different because it presents different order of things. We have the last great conflicts here, worship time, Sabbath to Sunday, Sunday law preparation, and history repeating itself, World War I, World War II, and World War III. And in this, it's a composite of what we are presenting also in the section that we just invited you to look into, but it's different because the first step of our research was to establish why is history repeating itself? And then we were able to establish that as we start with heaven and we come on the earth, and more specifically with Genesis 3, we see that there is a rapid progression of establishment of church and state government, and more specifically of a first Sunday law in 321 AD, which was not necessarily established by the church. It needed the power of the civil government to enforce. And this is where we see, you could say, the birth of the Roman Catholic Church as a church and state government. This had been attempted before in history, but the Roman Catholic Church is the longest enduring Christian church in history. And here we have, from the heaven above, an attempt to repair the time, because with the Roman Catholic Church, not only it attempted to bring the civil and the religious government together, but it also attempted to do exactly what we read in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, that the dragon would attempt to change the times and the seasons. And he gave its seat, power, and authority to the Roman Catholic Church to do that. Then we saw in 1888 as well that there was another attempt to bring in the Sunday law to Senator Blair. But previous to that, there was a presentation of the biblical calendar restored in 1844, but it was refused. So everything went on a standby, and it was followed with World War I as a result of insubordination. Another attempt was made in 1939 of restoring the biblical calendar for worship, and that also was refused. In the same year, this time, World War II, which started in 1939, another result of insubordination on the part of the Seventh Church. We have books here that we recommend greatly if you are interested to peruse, and this one here, The Keys of This Blood, Malachi Martin, 1990, a very, very interesting book written by a Jesuit, and it's kind of strange to recommend it, but that gives the plan of what was to follow with the fall of, or the end of the Cold War in 1989, with the fall of the wall in Berlin, between Berlin East and West, and the establishment also of the Republic of Russia, where communism seemingly had fallen. Then we have the announcement of the New World Order under President Bush, and this is much more actuality than you think. And we do recommend greatly that you visit this particular section of our website called The Last Conflict, as well as these videos, which you have already viewed, but instead of maybe viewing the video, you may just want to look at the PDF. And when we provide a PDF, it's definitely much easier because you can even copy them in a hard copy. And also we have brought some studies on the Dies Domini to demonstrate without a shadow of a doubt that this was not just an ordinary ecclesiastical letter from John Paul II. It was actually a setting in motion of another Sunday law, which, because of the era of the 1990, again in 1995, biblical calendar was presented, but again it was refused, so the timing had to be postponed. So as you continue to study and look into the prophecies, you will discover that there is definitely an historical application of the prophecies, but also a present-day application. And in this particular file here, this is what we attempt to show you step by step through the prophecies of Daniel. And then we present also the prophecy of Revelation, specifically in this study here of the 23rd decree, the year 2025. You do not want to miss also this study on the World Economic Forum, very, very directed towards the New World Order, globalism, and all a plan of action. Again, it's called another revolution, an industrial revolution. There was one in the 1800s which totally changed the world, and now they're attempting to bring another one, knowing the consequences of the first one. And now it has affected the economy, but it has also affected the climate, changing totally what the people were used to, living off the farm, producing their own food and not having to depend on merchant, and basically also not needing so much of money to live, because it's very expensive to live in the city because you have to buy everything. You have to buy your food, you have to buy transportation, you have to buy many, many things that on the farm, it could be much more restrained because you produce your own food. You don't always need to go to the city, although you might have to buy some certain products, but at the same time, you are able to produce a lot from living in the country. So these we recommend greatly, as it is gearing towards a Sunday law again. It cannot be denied. So we encourage you to study and read and look at as much as possible of this information and see if they have value. As we go to the next one, it's to show you a book that we recommend greatly to read from A.T. Jones, The National Sunday Law, for which we have presented this short video showing when they were in court. Of course, it's a mock trial. It's not the real people, but it is a very good explanation of what A.T. Jones spoke about, and what he was able to do was to defeat the attempt of Senator Blair to set up a Sunday law in the United States in 1888. The Two Republics, or Rome and the United States of America, from the same author, from A.T. Jones, is a piece of gold for those who are interested in finding out what is the United States of America is gearing towards. And literally, just like the church is repeating the history of Israel, the United States of America is repeating the history of Rome. Both republics, both very successful in their time, and yet very decadent because of so much money and so much success. That's what we see with the United States of America, which we know, according to prophecy, it would let go of this principle of morality that it held all these years since the 1790 era, since they were established. And it was once said that just like Rome, United States was great while she was good. But United States will cease to be great when she will cease to be good. And she shows those signs right now unhappily. Another great book that we recommend greatly for you to read is The Great Controversy, found in the writing of Mrs. Ellen G. White on her website, and more specifically here, chapter 8. You need to study, and you can start with chapter 7, but you need to study the speech, the presentation that Martin Luther offered to the Roman bishops, and now he could not recant because they could not show him wrong. It was only a matter of him being excommunicated for his action, and maybe get killed, but he refused to recant. And this is a great example. This is basically the start of Protestantism, which simply means protesting. And they were protesting. They were actually telling the Roman bishop that they will not back up. And the Prince of Germany came to the rescue of Martin Luther and was able to save his life. And then he was able to continue the Reformation. Unhappily, we are told that the Reformation did not finish its work because of one of the reasons was Martin Luther was very anti-Semitist, and he could not go any further than what he had learned because of the fact that he did not like the Jewish people at all. And when new light was presented to him, he refused them. Like the feasts of the Lord were presented to him from Leviticus 23, he refused them because he said it was Jewish. So it's very, very sad when a person is actually prejudiced of any kind, and it stops the movement, and the Reformation was not finished. There's another excellent chapter that we recommend greatly from the Great Controversy, again, chapter 35, which is called The Character and Aims of the Papacy, a piece of gold to recognize that the Romanism, or the Roman Catholic Church, will not change. It's more Protestantism that has changed. And then now they're adapting with Catholicism. And again, that movement of Protestantism that started with Martin Luther and with the Reformer has gone stagnant because of wanting to be united with the Catholic Church. But all along, God has his people, but nevertheless, it does stop the movement of going forward with the teaching. And another chapter, chapter 12, under the French Reformation, and it's interesting because it's after this chapter 12, you would have to go to 35 to learn more about papacy. But this particular chapter 12, specifically page 234, you will see the history, you will read the history of the Jesuit. The Jesuit was created right around Protestantism, around 1500. 1517 is actually when Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses on the door of the Chapel of Wittenberg. And not too long after, how successful he had been in presenting the gospel to the people, the Roman Catholic Church rose the Jesuit, which is an order which basically was meant to destroy Protestantism. And by the grace of God, it has been preserved, but it has definitely retarded, it has really definitely stopped the movement of the Protestantism to be able to perform what it was meant to perform and to finish the work in righteousness. So we encourage you to read those chapters, and in particular the study that we're mentioning. And now we would like to speak a few words about something maybe that you have never thought about, and it's the Cold War that came about as a period of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union and their respective allies, the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc. And this occurred actually right after the Second World War, which terminated around 1945. And you hear about the Cold War around 1950. And actually here they're saying the first phase of the Cold War began shortly after the end of World War II in 1945. But we know too that it was around 1949 that NATO, the formation of NATO, a defensive agreement in 1949, brought about now Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, that wanted to basically obtain their victory, claiming their victory, that they had won the war against Germany, although it was United States and England who helped them out, bailed them out, and the rest is history. When you read this about the Cold War, the reason why we're mentioning it is because right now in the Ukraine, there is another Cold War, and the people are actually mentioning it, and some politicians are comfortable with it, but with the idea of a new Cold War. But this article, which is very fresh from the press, and it's only they say here it's more than 2 months old, but it's quite young. And they say that they should not be happy, that the politicians should not be comfortable with a new Cold War. The reason is because they believe that contrary to the first Cold War, they believe that it's not going to finish very well. It's not going to end very well for anyone. And you can see that with what's happening now with China and Taiwan and all the war and the rumor of war that we hear. And us, particularly in America, we have a war on the east side of us, which would be in Europe and Russia, and on the west side of us, which is China. So we're like basically like a sandwich now between those two, and that would not be very comfortable for America. But as we continue to guide you to our research here of the Cold War, we want to bring you to some picture of that were taken right after the Cold War terminated around 1989, with particularly the fall of the wall in Berlin. And this picture, I was blessed as a missionary to travel to Germany. This picture is taken actually in front of the Chapel of Wittenberg, where Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses in 1517. This is actually the chapel, and it still exists today. Beautiful place in Wittenberg in Germany. And this you will surely recognize. This is the Castle of Wittenberg. And this is the tower where Martin Luther had written a song, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God." And basically at the castle tip here at the top, at the crown, it is actually in German, and it says, "A mighty fortress is our God," on the castle of Wittenberg in Germany. And this picture I had the pleasure of taking when I was in Germany as a missionary distributing the Great Controversy with our team. We also had an opportunity while we work in Poland as missionary to visit the concentration camp in Poland, Auschwitz. And this is the gate of Auschwitz. Arbeit macht frei in German means work, means freedom in English. And it's a very sad place to visit. It's a very, and we have used here the fence of Auschwitz for our front page of Four Winds publication. You may have already recognized it. But these pictures of prisoner, these picture, of course, of the prisoner, the people all are victim of the concentration camp during the Second World War, of the genocide. And these were actually the beds. This is where the people were sleeping, the sleeping quarters of Auschwitz. And we actually visited the camp, this one in Treblinka. These were actually the toilet, the bathroom, and this is kind of sad too because it's a living quarter as well. So it was bathroom / living quarters. So you can just imagine what it must have smelled. This is actually the gas, the pellets that used to be used for the chambers where the people were killed, some upon arrival. And this is the crematories where they would be burned afterward. Those are the chambers, and some of those chambers are still in existence, and you can visit them. It's pretty sad. And then, of course, this brings you to the 1960s, where there was a promise that there would not be any walls being built by a politician, Albrecht, which was a German, Russian, communist politician. And while he was saying that there would not be any walls because the people had heard about it, and it didn't take very long that the wall was erected between the East and the West. And this, of course, is when the Cold War is recognized as being finished, when the wall came down in 1989, 1990. And it was a very interesting visit when I was in Germany because we were able in Berlin to visit the wall. This is part of the wall that is still remaining. This side here is the east side of Berlin, while this side where we were, of course, is the west side. But now, since 1989, 1990, this is still there. Those are the names of the people who died attempting to jump that wall. And again, from 1961 to 1990, it's mainly young people. Their names are indicated, and it's mainly young people that attempted to jump, but they were actually shut down. And this is the wall now opened between the east. This is the east side of Berlin. And where we were standing right here is the west side, but the wall has been removed now. And this picture was taken around the 1994-95 era. It seems so far away, but nevertheless, we know that these things now, they seems to be agitating again, and we have to definitely pray and especially do our work as quickly as possible. And around the same time, this is when the Dies Domini was published by the Vatican. This is taken from the Vatican, by the way, from the website. In 1998, the Apostolic Letter of John Paul II, which we have analyzed and will continue to analyze to see more and more of the rebuttal that we can bring, because it's definitely full of doctrines, definitely not correct, but still there are doctrines that we should be aware of, which were not necessarily the doctrine that the Roman Catholic Church upheld for those centuries. And when you analyze them against the doctrine of Seventh-day Adventist Church, they're very parallel, but they contradict the truth that we uphold. Now, this one here again is the same picture showing you another Cold War, and we do not want that for sure. So we need to pray about this. Where are we in history? We are right here. We have passed the first king, the second king, the third king, which represent basically what the Holy Roman Empire has attempted over history. The first one was Charlemagne, who established the first Holy Roman Empire, and the era was 800 to 814. After his death, we have to go all the way from 814 to 1798, when the Pope was taken prisoner to France by General Berthier, which was from the army of Napoleon under the French Revolution. And this is when the second king was put down to pass on to the third one, 1933 to 1945. And this, at this time, it's under Hitler, with the World War II coming up. And we know that the World War II started in 1939. And again, this is representative of, we have four Reichs, four Holy Roman Empire. Because of the four beasts of Daniel chapter 7, we know there will be four different governments. And even Hitler in his days was talking about the Third Reich. And if you do some research on the Third Reich, the Third Kingdom, the Third Holy Roman Empire, that was Hitler himself who declared in some literature, and we have that in our research under the study of the book of Daniel, he declared that he was establishing the Third Reich, and it would last at least 1,000 years. From the time he declared it, it was destroyed by 1945. So this is a very interesting historical point, because there is still a fourth beast, a fourth king that is to be set up. And we believe that it will involve again the same nation, the USA and the UK, which was Britain called before. Russia will also be involved, Germany and France. And we know that it is to be watched, and people do not believe it, but we believe that the prophecy does not lie. And we are demonstrating it in our study of the 2025 PowerPoint that we have prepared. And what is the connection between AD 325 and the year 2025? Well, we have a plan here that has been actually given by the Third Ecumenical Nicene Council 225, and that comes directly from the papacy. What is the connection? The Third Ecumenical Nicene Council 2025 is an ecumenical gathering proposed by Pope Francis and Patriarch Bartholomew of the Orthodox Church, inviting all Christians to send representatives to meet together in 2025. It's still ahead of us, 2 years from now, to commemorate the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD. So what is to commemorate? With the unpredictability of Pope Francis, some Catholics have wondered if he would call another council, the Vatican III. It appears not. Something that big won't do for Francis. He's thinking even bigger. The Church Universal will be getting a Nicaea III. And what is the Church Universal? Well, the plan of the Pope is to establish a church. Though it has a diversity of doctrine, it will have a unity of people, which is absolutely the description of what is ecumenism. Ecumenism, you bypass the doctrine, but you bring the people together. And when you have the people together, then you get the civil government to impose your law and your doctrine, and everybody has to follow them. Then the doctrine comes back, which are Roman Catholic doctrine. Create a different Roman Catholic Church, 2022 this was. There is no need to create another church, but to create a different church. And what was the plan? The Interfaith Complex is set to open in 2022, and it's called Chrislam, an Abrahamic family house. Is this that Pope Francis' idea of a different Roman Catholic Church? It is. So his proposal, the names of the house of worship have been announced as the Iman al-Tayyibeh Mosque. This is for the Islam religion. St. Francis Church. You should guess it's a Roman Catholic church with the name Francis after the Pope Francis. And Moses ben Maimon Synagogue, which is a Jewish presentation of religion. So you have Islam, you have Catholicism for Christianity, and you have the Jewish synagogue, the Jewish nation. The church naming is a direct reference to Pope Francis, who came to Abu Dhabi 2 years ago in a very significant visit. Pope never go and visit, especially in Islam nation, for no purpose at all. And you can see here that they put it under Chrislam, Chris for Christ and Lamb for Islam, and the Abrahamic family house, because the Islam people recognize Abraham, the Jew recognize Abraham, and so is Christianity recognize Abraham. So that's the plan for 2025. And this is what has inspired us to go forward and teach what we're teaching from the historical point of view, from the preparation for the Sunday law, from the point of view also of what we have been discussing in this particular session, having to do with religious liberty. Now, without prejudice, we are showing you right now, we will show you right now some it's actually from newspaper. We don't have a video on it, but it's some clips from newspaper, which brings us to some very interesting recognition. President Hichilema commends SDA for partnering with the government to develop Zambia. And so that tells you that there are some plans in the making, and these are new, they're from 2023, of the Seventh-day Adventist Church becoming partner with the country of Zambia. We will not make any comments. We want you to pray as you see these things and think. Government wanting now to partner with a church. General Conference President Ted Wilson visit Nigeria. And Nigeria is a country that has a lot of difficulties right now as far as the freedom of religion. During his March 2014 trip, Pastor Ted Wilson, Seventh-day Adventist Church World President, urged government to sustain religious liberty and freedom of conscience in order to build a better Nigeria. Wilson said that religious liberty and freedom of conscience provide a solid foundation for peace and prosperity in any nation, and it should be protected in all parts of the country. I want to thank the Christian community of Nigeria at large. I also want to give my appreciation to the federal government and to the state for the religious liberty that is provided for all citizens. This is really the foundation of progress and prosperity in the nations. As we continue with our visit of different clips from the newspaper, so this was to thank the government for upholding religious liberty. Appeal from Seventh-day Adventist Church World Church President for urgent prayer. And this one is a bit younger. And I am earnestly appealing to Seventh-day Adventist Church member and other worldwide to begin a strong worldwide prayer initiative for our members and church organization in the Central African country of Burundi, who are experiencing systematic religious liberty abuse by the government. For more than 6 months, the Burundi government has increasingly harassed and abused the Seventh-day Adventist Church by imprisoning, beating, intimidating Seventh-day Adventist Church leaders and members. The government has presented the ability of the Adventist Church to function through our duly elected leadership of the Burundi Union Mission, who were appropriately and legally appointed by the East Central African Division of the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. It is apparent the wonderful total member involvement activities of God's people to help others through Christ's method of dealing with people physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually have not been valued by the government of Burundi. During this time, I have personally appealed to the president of Burundi with no response from his office. We now call on him and his government ministries to adhere to international laws, United Nations protocols, and Organization of African Union precepts to honor religious liberty and freedom of conscience for all citizens of Burundi and the legitimate Seventh-day Adventist administrative team in the country. So as we stop here, you're more than welcome to look at the link here and go back and search for itself. But this was actually a bit younger than the one we just presented. This was in 2019. Now, this one is much younger still, but it's just to show you the progression of what is happening. This is March 2023. And this is an Explosive Growth Drives Adventist Church in Africa. So we're glad. I mean, we're glad. We want the people to know the teaching of the Seventh Church, as we call it often. And we want them to know that it's a very active church, in the church that presents, as they say, physically, mentally, spiritually, the teaching of Jesus Christ. But it's also to show you kind of understanding that we are studying about religious liberty and freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. No comments as far as the rest. Here we have Pope has profound understanding of social issues in Africa, said visiting Zambian president. Again, the Pope visiting Rome. I should say the president visiting Rome and shaking hands with the Pope. And he had a privileged meeting with the Pope Francis on Saturday, discuss economic. This was 2022. It's not that long ago. And he was impressed that the Pope has a profound understanding of such issues in Zambia and the rest of Africa. If you keep reading, you will see that the Pope is aware of our educational policies of offering education to all, including those that are disadvantaged. I told the Pope that I am a beneficiary of free education, born in a village, and education made a difference. And now he's pleased because the Vatican and the establishment for giving us this opportunity to meet the Pope early in our presidency. He says that he wants to see the Pope getting involved in Zambia with the system of education that the Vatican has to offer. And I guess he doesn't know anything about the system of education, which we know is a plan of the Catholic Church to establish from 2030, of which we speak about in our presentation. And what does it entail to? It's an education that basically will change completely even more of what people have been accustomed to be educated with. And it's definitely not, it's more humanitarian, it's more saving the planet, it's more a green planet, even a Sabbath green planet. It is not at all even the basic of old Catholic Church. So you may want to check these things because we're right now facing probably the greatest crisis of history as far as religious liberty, as far as education, as far as what we just presented you with, the Jesuit activity everywhere around the world, more than ever. And soon, the whole world will worship the beast. Soon, a Sunday law will be coming out. Why do we say that? Because Sunday is the mark of authority of the Roman Catholic Church. But Sunday can only be established with the union of the civil government. And because of apostate Protestantism in America, which was supposed to be the guardian, which was supposed to be the asylum of the teaching of true religious liberty, separation of church and state, we do not need to add any comments after showing you those pictures, and we will not make any comments. We want you to think for yourself of what you saw. We could have done it with other churches, but we are the church who basically, we believe in the truth of the church, the teaching mainly that we know of, the 7 pillars. We definitely totally stand behind those 7 pillars: the Savior, the sanctuary, the Sabbath, the soul temple, the state of the dead, the spirit of prophecy, and the second coming. We uphold also the truth of the health message, and we definitely stand by the writing of the Spirit of Prophecy, written by Mrs. Ellen G. White, and of course, the whole Bible from Genesis to Revelation. So we just present to you who we are, what we stand for, what we teach, and at this time, in this particular study, we are studying freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech under religious liberty. And we have seen that religious liberty is based on the separation of church and state. Doesn't mean that we have to be enemies, but definitely not by collaborating in certain ways where we are under the government curriculum or the government direction. That's another Constantine and Bishop of Rome Sunday law right under our very eyes. And we know because true education will always draw you or lead you towards the 7-day Sabbath, because you will learn it from creation. False education, true education is based on faith, where false education being based on doubt will lead you to Sunday keeping. We rest our case, and may the Lord bless you as you continue to study, to read, to educate yourself, so that the Lord can use you, the Lord of creation will use you, and we will be able together to finish this work in righteousness. But we need much wisdom, and that's why we prefer not to make any comments showing you those clips. We know that you have enough understanding to see what is correct here, what is not correct maybe, and add your prayer to ours, because soon some of these people will be our very enemies. May the Lord protect us and guide us. This is our prayer in our Savior's name.